sending a link to the Discord to one of the playtesters or potential playtesters or whatever. Guy I've been dealing with. I honestly don't actually know his given name. Luke. It's Luke. Grey Castle Press. I've been interacting with him some on threads lately, and he said he would be available Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday next week. So, yeah. And
awesome.
Another guy, Grant, do what? Sorry. Oh, okay. Another guy, Graham Gentz, is interested. You probably saw him say that here in the Discord. But I was just talking to him earlier tonight. He had some travel delays from Denver back home to New Jersey with the storm front coming through that way.
Sure.
So he is hopefully going to take a look at things tomorrow morning to give me the final answer of if he is in or not. So if he's in, then that gives us 3 players and a GM. If not, I'll probably bug. How did my brain totally shut down? Does the launch podcast? Did the Party First game with us? Jeez Louise.
Yes. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, like I'm trying to find the right channel to go back to double check. Zach. Yeah. Some of these channels maybe could be removed. I don't think anybody's ever going to bother to talk about the collapse, for instance. So.
Right on.
All right.
That's something
anyway.
too. Yeah. We can talk. Well, we can talk for hours about stuff for sure.
Okay. All right. I thought if there was something you wanted to address on that right now.
No. I was just gonna say, like, what kind of stuff do you want on the Discord? Because I've got a Goblin Market channel on here. Like, what kind of stuff do you want me to put on there? Like, I'm working on ideas constantly. Like,
yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and that's kind of like I'm open to whatever, right?
okay.
So, and Goblin Market is kind of your baby. So, like, if you want to, like, I don't know, a stream of consciousness, vocalize ideas you're working on, awesome. If you want to, like, bring some of your playtesters in here, I could set up another voice channel if you want. Like, I don't know. I'm open to whatever. Yeah.
Right on. All right, I've got all the levels look good for volume. Let's just jump in. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Greetings, gamers. Hey, if you're listening to this and expecting to hear some Ashes Reborn talk, you're listening to the wrong podcast today, but that's okay. How about you stick around and you listen to episode 6 of Will and Jerod Make a Game, which I think we're just sticking with that title as of this point. My name is Jerod, and I am here with Will, and we're looking to make a new tabletop role-playing game.
Sure enough, I'm Will. Not sure how much more I have to add to that. Maybe I run Gamenomicon, and you might know that from Party First and a whole bunch of second guest system games and that sort of thing. And Jerod, of course, has some endeavors of his own. I'll leave to him.
So I've got Paroxysm by Design, and today Will and I are going to be talking about something that's very near and dear to my heart when it comes to role-playing games, and that is building in an experience system for your characters to level up or get better, or however you want to approach it in your game. What I think I find so interesting about this and about the SRD for the Wound by Tension is that they work so well as a one shot, especially Party First, because it is a horror game and it works wonderfully as a one shot. But just like everything else that I think that I've ever touched as far as design standpoint, I always keep adding to make it bigger, to do more of a long form story, which, you know what? There's a lot of games out there that don't need that on there. But from the play testing that I've done, pretty much everyone that I've played with has always been like, I want to play this same character because the world and the setting that you've set up is so rich. So let's keep doing it and let's see if we can make our characters better. How has that translated to your feeling coming into this, Will?
Um, I think that is a ripe territory to explore. Like you said, Party First was just planned for one shots. If a character dies, if he dies, he dies, right?
Yeah.
Like to steal a little Apollo Creed there, right? And there were some optional, very bare bones advancement rules in the core Party First book. So I think that is territory that is ripe to explore. Particularly important, I think, as you move into other genres. Like you said, it makes sense for horror to do one shots, right? Like, I guess it's the horror TV show series now, American Horror Story, right? I guess that is serialized, but even that caps at a season and then they reset and move on. It's hard to really sustain horror for, say, a year's worth of games or something. On the other hand, the genre that we're tinkering around with in right now, kind of space fantasy swashbuckling, I think is perfect for that. Like, people want to see those characters get out there and do awesome stuff and do more awesome stuff, and for the awesome stuff to get awesomer. To reuse that word until it loses all meaning to me. We were just rewatching Ted Lasso the other day. I wish I could remember now. They talk about that thing when you say a word too many times. Awesome has now hit that. But anyway, that's where I am. I think this is the perfect place for it, because this genre is one where people want that.
Well, and I think you hit on something. I know where the title and what we're really going for is working on experience levels, and I don't use levels too many times because that's not what we're doing at all. But you brought up the idea too of what is the structure and a natural conclusion to a role-playing game. And I especially have been getting into more of like Force and Darkness games, Powered by the Apocalypse, stuff like that, where apart from Brindlewood, all these really focus on mini campaign sort of ideas, where you're looking at, more of a condensed season. Uh, and what I've been finding that this is way I've been kind of designed in written adventures, even for my own gaming for years this way, where I like to do like a 5 shot adventure that has a ongoing storyline that, okay, then this takes care of that part of the city. Then that's done. Now there's a big break in between. Now we can go into this part. And I think that's a natural. I don't know if this is a newer thing that role playing games are doing, that they're really leaning into the idea of like TV seasons, but I'm finding it be really rewarding. So I want there to be an accelerated experience as your characters get better, but I also really want to try and focus on in this game, which I haven't. I think I've got a good idea of what I want to do, of like what's the end? What does the end look like for these characters? Do they go out in a ball of flame? Do they get their houses to major status? And that's kind of the way I'm leaning right now. Or do they fulfill some sort of personal quest? I'm not quite sure. Um, have you done anything in that design space before?
Um, well, before I quite get to that part, something I think I want to hit on with PBTA and its lineage, its offspring. Right. That all of them kind of tackle things a little bit differently, and that's how you wind up with it kind of carved in Brindlewood being its own thing, and others, and so on. But I think you kind of hit on something with the seasonal aspect there, versus adventures in that. I hesitate to say newer at this point,
Yeah.
but that narrative first mindset, right? The fiction first, the story is driving everything. The like particularly a lot of the PBTA that I have had experience with, like say Monster Hearts or something, is built so heavily on that forward motion, at all times, kind of that story that is happening somewhat organically. Like, you know, as a general rule, at least not to the levels of D&D or Pathfinder anyway, you're not finding published adventures for, say, Apocalypse World or Monster of the Week or something, Monster Hearts, whatever, right? Like, they just don't structurally, as they tell their stories, they're not really geared to that same sort of reset endpoint that most adventures kind of sketch out and build toward. So I think that might be a question for us to tackle, and it may be something you've thought about, even if it wasn't necessarily framed this way, but might be something to tackle for Unity, as far as the party first mold so far, like we said, is very geared towards one shots, which makes adventures, I think, fit that mold very, very well. So I would kind of float the question here, um, is that, do we want to just carry that type of storytelling structure over in Unity? Because I think that has some bearing down the line on adventure structure and character growth, or try to find a way to make it push just that kind of fiction forward motion of PBTA and everything kind of out of that umbrella.
Ooh, yeah. Really good
I
questions.
went sideways from our initial
No,
thought for this episode, didn't I?
this is perfect. This is exactly like when we started talking about it. I'm like, I was getting really excited about it. We're going to talk about how to get experience at some point in time. But so this is what I've been thinking is that so if all the characters belong to a house and they're just as much of the responsibility for the house as the lord and lady who own it, they're going to answer to a major domo or a head butler type of person to the house, and they're going to go out on these adventures to make the house better. And I've got it set up like these different ranks. And if they do so many different things to get to a certain level of their house prominence, then the house can go up to becoming a major house. And at that point, I'm kind of like, well, that's it. Because I don't have any
That
other.
seems like a logical endpoint.
And so if we can, and I've also been trying to thread this into probably doing too much. That's what I'm tend to do anyway. um, is I've been really getting the idea of like the pre-session actions, the session itself, which is the adventure, and then the post-session action. Like Blades of the Dark does like here's your action, then your downtime. Uh, kind of structure. But what if our downtime is really just your training along with your adventure, your relationships, your stuff like that within your own house? And so then you're gonna have this ongoing story within your house no matter what. that's getting interrupted or punctuated by these different adventures that you have to go do. Like you have to go meet with a duke of another house to secure mining rights for an asteroid belt, or you have to, there's some predatory flora that's been discovered on this planet that's encroaching on your territories. You got to go figure that out. And then you get back, and then you meet some of the other people in your house that you're working with, and there's something weird going on there. But this is during your downtime, so you can have little mysteries like that happening that are ongoing that aren't like life or death situations, but they can build in a theme for what you guys want to do for gaming. I don't know if this answers the question, but it's definitely something that really is firing my imagination for something cool to do. I don't know if it's possible, but it seems neat.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I don't think that, or at least it addressed the question and then moved on pretty quickly. It sounded like at the moment you envision kind of the structural storytelling goal being the rise of the house.
Mhm.
Sure, everybody will have their individual characters, but the goal, so to speak, our end point is the house reaching major status, and then that's kind of the quitting point, so to speak. Um, and that sounds great to me. Then the stuff you kind of moved it back to after that was, I think, pulling it back to the character advancement, growth training type of discussion that we were initially supposed to be having. So I know we had a little bit of chat about that through the Google Doc we've been working on, and I honestly love kind of combining the downtime and the growth and training like that. And as far as doing too much about trying to combine that with character growth and house interaction and growth, yeah, that might be cleaner to separate mechanically for the I'm not sure it's too much, but just that it might be cleaner mechanically, maybe to tie the house level stuff more into things going on with adventures and the like, and then the other for characters. One moment though. Um, to carry on with that thought for the moment, yeah, I think we also had some good discussion about the those kind of downtime actions and what the training, what the impact of that and the training might be on kind of the flow of play at the game, and potentially disrupting or holding things up too much. And I do have to say, I really, at least tentatively, before we've really played it to try it out, really like the idea that you had of splitting the training kind of into bookending your sessions. So starting with the roles and learning how many points you've got available and that sort of thing, and then ending your session with actually applying them and maybe cross-referencing the rule book for what you want to buy and that type of thing, kind of keeping the player knowledge gathering and looking the rules back up and that sort of thing, kind of keeping that out of the way so it's not holding up the session. I really like that. But one thing, the reason I specifically wanted us to discuss this in a podcast episode, is I wanted you to break down a bit more for me. Just seeing it written as tables, the kind of XP training and like point generation scheme that you've got here is not clicking for me. And yeah, I think I started to write a comment on the Google Doc about like, wait, how does this, wait, and that, and then you know what? I think it'll just be better to talk about this out loud. Like this is a podcast episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, I think I've come up with something that will be a tremendous thing to put in with any wound by tension system, I think. Because the idea, what we're trying to do here, this all started with the idea of doing a pre-session something to build up the pools of party points, tension points, and morale points, which those all get relabeled in the game that we're working on. But to try and build these pools up in a meaningful way, right? Instead of just going like, all right, well, this is kind of what we did. Here's a bunch of points, done. Um, so I came up with the idea of the experience points things, and I'm really excited about them. So here's the idea, and I'm gonna throw in there an asterisk. I'm gonna say the word asterisk. We're gonna keep on going, and then at the end we'll circle back around for what that asterisk meant. So the idea for the experience points is that all the abilities and all the skills are going to be tied to one of the four attributes or be listed as general. Okay. Just like a little tag, like the one of the abilities that we're working on is like what, walking fire. So you can shoot multiple people in a turn, right, for combat. And that's going to be tied to your vigor. Okay. So at the beginning of so part of the pre-session is that you're going to go into training. You're going to roll d6 per point of your attribute that you want to train in. All right, here's the asterisk. Okay, we're going to come back to this part in a second. All right, so you roll. So let's say you have a vigor of 3. You roll 3 dice. You get to keep 2 automatically, just like a regular roll. If you want to keep more than 2, you have to give the GM a tension point. Now, these are your experience points.
Okay.
You probably want to keep all of them, but not necessarily. And to avoid like feel bad moments for your experience points, I want to put in there like if you roll a 1, you can re-roll it. Like just like if you roll 3 ones, that's such a bad feel bad. And so then you put those into a pool next to the attribute that you trained in. Okay.
Okay.
So that's part of the pre-session. Do your adventure. Then at the end of the adventure, there is a point buy list of things you can get. You can buy your abilities. You can get your attributes to move up. You can move your skills up. And then other things that we haven't thought of as of yet.
Okay.
Starting cost. Yeah.
So, oh, I was just going to say, so one question about the skills being tied into a particular attribute, like vigor for this instance, then
Yep.
if you go to spend those points that you rolled, can you only spend those on things with the vigor tag, like in that category?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
that's what I was assuming, but I wasn't. If you outright said it, I missed it. I dig that because it not only does it mean like you're good at what vigor encompasses, right? The physical gung ho type of stuff, but it also means your baseline, inherent bodily strength or whatever, stamina, that type of thing, means that you can more quickly learn the skills associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
I really love that from a flavor mechanic marriage. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I'm really happy the way this turned out. Now, then, depending on what profession you take, you have your 3 abilities that you can choose from. One, you'll start automatically. The 2 other abilities you can buy at a discount. So let's say abilities are at like I think I put 30 points, I think, maybe 20. I don't know. I can't remember. But then if you want to try and buy
I
a
remember right.
discount, yeah, if you wanted to buy a discounted ability because of your profession, that one's going to cost less just because you have that profession. And so I know we talked about like what does that mean to have a discount on there? Well, it's only for that. And so you're exactly right. If most characters should have at least one attribute of 4 dice or more, right? And so that'll be the one that they'll be able to a lot quicker train in to focus their character in because that's their focus already. Doesn't mean you can't do the other one, just
Right.
you'll do this one faster. Now, I want to come back to that asterisk real quick. I originally just put in there you can train one attribute. Can you?
I think that seems important, to probably limit that to just the one, because I think that relates to a thought that I had floating in my head just now, which is the question of what's your goal on how often people will be buying
Yeah.
an upgrade of some kind for their characters. At current costs and dice numbers, this is just off the top of my head, not running the math. I'm going to assume that's an upgrade depending, on the rolls and stuff, every other session, maybe every session if they're real lucky.
Yeah, if you're real
So
lucky, it's
is that
possible to do it every session. Yeah.
yeah? So like, is that the pace you want? Do you want it slower? In which case, costs start inflating. Like you just have to make bigger numbers. At least is one way to handle that. Which I mean is possible, but isn't always the most elegant solution. And back to how many stats or attributes are rolling to try to train in, that question, I won't say issue, but question of how fast do you want people to progress and how do you encourage or discourage that becomes all the more pressing the more dice they roll. So if you're rolling what's probably a common number of dice with 4 attributes, we'll say like 4 2 2 2, just to be super simple, 10 dice. Like you're probably buying a 20-point upgrade every session at that
Well,
rate.
but you couldn't, right? Because all those abilities are tied to a certain attribute. So your training pools are tied to
Okay,
that
that's fair.
attribute.
Well,
But but at the same time, you do have the very correct thought of like, well, doesn't that mean that you'll go like maybe 3 adventures without getting anything, then all of a sudden you'll get like
oh,
three
right,
or like
right.
you'll just get like a mother load of stuff all at once.
And raises the question of could you combine them for general stuff and buy out all the generals really fast?
Right. Yeah, and I
I
think the
mean,
generals can just
and
take
you could disbar that by saying you couldn't combine them, but it's a question.
yeah, like for some reason, in the back of my head, I was saying no, but right now I don't really have any general abilities except for like maybe stuff that we had talked about that maybe tie it to species, but we're not going to do that. But like breathing underwater or glide power or turning into gas, like all those things that I mean, I guess you could tie it to an attribute, but I think I feel more comfortable as putting it as general, I guess. I'm not quite sure. What do you
Yeah.
think?
No, I think generals, and probably quite a few generals, are probably a good idea. I don't know. There'll be a balancing point to hit as far as much as I love be having a high attribute, meaning you will advance faster in skills associated with that. There is also a question, I guess, of how quickly people max that out and they just buy everything there is. And then every character that's good at vigor is essentially the same at that
Right.
point. So I think both just the general question of how quickly that happens is important to watch. And I think a way to encourage more variety are interesting generals that would allow people to branch off a bit more.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. And right now for the abilities, because because you're not going to buy just the abilities. You'll want to buy skills and you want to boost your attributes
Right, right.
eventually. But the abilities are the easiest thing to talk about. Um, because right now, 12 classes, three starting choices from abilities, which means we've got 36 abilities, and they're all 36 of those are tied to an attribute right now. And in the background, I think I put together, I think 12 general um, abilities, which gets you 48. Uh, Party first, if you include advantages and abilities together, had 36 total.
Okay.
Um, and like this stuff, I definitely want you to take a look at
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because you're going to have a lot more of an insight on creating those than I ever did for. 'Cause I didn't create any of those, right? I think I'm pretty happy with the ideas that I've got in there. Now it's getting in there and trying to crank out the mechanics, but I mean, 36, they're not all going to be winners, right?
Well, hopefully not. I mean, I guess we don't have to um, hold ourselves slaves to balance the same way a competitive card game does,
Yeah,
like we've been familiar with. Um, but also, I don't want us to have any, clear stinkers or clear, oh yeah, everybody just buys this first on every character because why would you ever not?
you're right. Yep. So that's the idea of the experience pools, and I really like it. We talked about this, and you made a great point. Because I just call them training points, but we can't do that
Oh,
because they're TP, and we already have tension points. Can't do that. And I liked how I did anyway. I agonized for a while, and then I was like, "Oh, experience points." I hear people are familiar with those or something.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the kind of age old issue of DMs, GMs, guides, matchmakers, whatever the title might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, at some point it's fun to have a unique and flavorful term, but sometimes it's fine for them to just be a GM. And
Yeah.
I think we're fine for it to just be XP.
Yeah. I think so too. But that does open a door for another conversation. I don't know how much we want to get into it, but that raises a good question. GM, that phrase has obviously fallen out of favor for multiple good reasons. Um, is there anything different that you have in your ear for this game at all?
Not off the top of my head. I mean, we used GM in Party First and the SRD, but for simplicity's sake and straightforwardness, um, I I'm not someone that has any particular qualms with the term. I think it describes its function in like practical abilities in a lot of ways. I mean, well, this is not to go way too far down that road, but I'll just say it does what it needs to do. The term does, but I've been open to other terms like Warmer in the Winter uses Matchmaker because I thought it was cute for a romance game. In this case, I would be fine with GM. Off the top of my head, Navigator springs to mind as kind of tying into the spacefaring, ship type of thing, and somebody who's kind of leading the way, who's guiding the story and such. They're very important, of course. Navigators on pirate era ships, extremely important, and but not the only person on the ship. responsible for anything. So I don't know. Without putting a lot of thought to it, I do kind of like Navigator now.
All right, well, tell you what, let's pencil it in for now. See what we think. Yeah, because I always like playing like with theme on stuff like that, and we've got a bunch of stuff. We got to figure out what to put the names to that really go with the setting. But yeah, like Three Musketeers, some sort of like yeah, something like that. I'm not quite sure what it is yet, but
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
figure it out. Awesome. Well, I think we're gonna finish within a half hour. I think.
I think we are running right up against that right now.
I loved I love taking like a good wayfarer does, which is the title of one of the professions that we've got here. We to check out all the little side angles here and there and take a nice little strolls through our thought process to see where we're at. But I'm also glad we're able to get back to the experience points. I think this is a system that wraps up really nicely and is very elegant for this type of game.
I like it. I like it. And yeah, I think I was just overthinking the chart for some reason. When you explain it out loud, it's very clear.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks everyone for listening. This is Will and Jerod Make a Game. If you have any comments or whatever, you can get on Jerod Leopold's YouTube where we're posting this. Just put a mention in there in the comments. And where can they find the actual podcast? Will?
Uh, it's the Gamenomicon podcast. Grab a podcatcher of your choice, and it's going to be in that main feed.
Catch them all. Awesome. Bye, everyone.